I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interviewed Chet Buchman. He is the managing partner of Swindoll, Janzen, Hawk & Lloyd, a full-service accounting firm in McPherson, Hutchinson, Manhattan, Salina, and Wichita, Kansas. Chet's passion lies in helping people, whether it's with their clients, their community, or themselves. His focus is on helping them get where they are to where they want to be. Chet is a member of the Kansas Society of Certified Public Accountants, Central Kansas chapter of KSCPA, member of the AICPA and the Chartered Global Management Accountants. He is certified by the National Association of Certified Valuation Analysts as a certified valuation analyst that certifies him to perform business valuation services. He is certified by the Exit Planning Institute as a certified exit planning advisor. This designation is specifically for business advisors who work closely with owners of privately held companies. During this interview with Chet, we discuss his journey from a small town with a population of less than 500 people that was focused on agriculture and farming to eventually leading his firm as a managing partner in Kansas. Chet shares his journey of transforming his firm from working on average over 52 hours a week to 45 hours a week and the commitment it took to get there. I hope you'll enjoy this interview. There's so many great action steps to really understand of what true workplace transformation is. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I'm with Chet Buchman. I am so excited to have you on the show today. Chet, do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself before we get started?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to it. So I am Chet Buchman, managing partner of Swindoll, Janzen, Hawk & Lloyd, which is about an 88-year-old firm located in central Kansas, mid-sized firm, multi-location. We're best known for our First 15 reading program, as well as what we call Path to 45, which is most people, most weeks during our busiest times of year, work a total hours of 45.
Wow. So what's the First 15 reading program?
So yeah, great question. At the beginning of every day, so people start their day, they have the option of reading for 15 minutes.
Nice.
And so we have, I think we started the program, this is our 11th year. We're up to getting close to 4,000 books read, somewhere around 400,000 pages, 5,000 pages, something like that. And so it's all optional. It's not a book club. It is required that it's a nonfiction book, physical copy book. And so we have libraries stocked around our offices. And so, yeah, you'll walk around and you'll see probably, 70 to 80% of our team on any given day beginning their day with reading.
That reminds me of those reading books in elementary school where you got prizes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like in Kansas, it was the Book It reading program with Pizza Hut. So you had to get a personal pan pizza. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, great. And I want to get to that path to 45, but we'll hold that to later to your story because I want to see how you got there. So we'd love to just start with the background on you. Where did you grow up and what did your parents do for a living?
Yeah. So I was generally raised in a small town in northeast Kansas called Alta Vista. So it's a town now that probably has a population of around probably 350 to 500 people, mainly ag. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And so the ranges from our ages, me, the oldest, and then my youngest sister is 13 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
And when I was in the 5th grade, my parents moved us to a town, McPherson, Kansas, which is about an hour and a half away from where I grew up. My and this is applicable probably. So my
So
dad
how
in
old were you? 15?
fifth grade. Yeah.
Fifth
So
grade.
I've been, what, 12? And so my grandpa died at a fairly young age, and he owned implement dealership, so farm implement dealership. And my
Okay.
dad was on the business side, and my uncle was on the mechanic side. And so
Mm.
after my grandpa died, it's kind of a failed family business transition. And so my dad and my uncle didn't get along.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
so it was a rub. And so shortly thereafter, maybe within a couple of years, my dad just packed us up and moved us to McPherson, which is a town of about 14,500.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yep. And so my dad left that and sold farm machinery for another company, Case IH. And over the years, he went from that, went back and got his master's degree, and then did insurance for a lot of years. And then
Mm.
my mom, as a stay-at-home mom, raising us kids,
Wow.
doing hard work.
So, like going back to your dad and your uncle, was your
Mhm.
family close with that extended family?
Yeah, really close. Yeah,
So,
really close. A lot of our relatives still live in and around the community, and so we were kind of the black sheep when we
mm, yeah. So I'm assuming you had a lot of cousins.
we do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, dozen or so probably at least.
Yeah. So were you in contact with them when you moved, or did you have to move from them too?
Not really. Yeah, maybe like a couple times a year we would go back and spend time with my grandma, and
Yeah.
then holidays, but that was about it. And
Yeah.
then that whatever that was 30 years ago or ish, the communication, the technology was much different, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but essentially, yeah, we
So
left.
what was your perspective on that with your dad and your uncle?
Yeah.
Like they,
I didn't really understand that at the time because I was so caught up in the effects on me. And so
right.
fifth grade is such a transitional phase.
Mhm.
And then, in that school, I knew everybody, was a part of everything. And then in McPherson, a smaller town, Kansas, it's hard to come in and fit in,
Yeah.
right? So I wouldn't have been like a tremendous athlete or anything like that at the time, or really like had all these creative artistic abilities or anything like that that would set me
Right.
apart. And so like that was a tough time period for me,
Mhm.
just the transition and um, getting acclimated to a new school. And
Right. And were you mad at your dad, or did you
yeah,
feel, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So how did you get past that at that time?
I don't know that I really did at that time.
Yeah.
I think that's probably something that it took me a lot of years before I could see that differently.
Hmm.
And I think, and my dad's a hero to me. And so there's a
Yeah.
part is like, I look up to the guy, think the world of him and my
Mhm.
mom. And so like you're stuck with this dichotomy of like one part of your brain is frustrated and sad and angry and disappointed. And the other part is, these are your heroes and you look up to them and you're sponging everything they teach you.
Yeah.
And so, I remember a time when my dad told me, and he said, as you get older, I'm going to get smarter. And so I think about college is when maybe my second or third year in college is when I really started understanding why he did what he did. And then it
Hmm.
became like, wow, that was one of the most valuable, one of the hardest things that you had to do. And it helped me out tremendously in my life.
Hmm.
You never know what the pathway would have been, but it
Hmm.
did create so many more opportunities, challenges, yes, but opportunities for me and my siblings and our family. And that's something I've started talking more openly to my dad in recent years, just
Hmm.
about that. And so I can know more. And because
Yeah.
he sheltered, he did a good job of protecting. He never said one bad thing, as I remember as a kid, about his family, my uncle, or any of that situation. He didn't make it somebody else's fault
Hmm.
or said anything negative would that something that would make me feel bad or feel angry towards
Hmm.
another family member or anything. And so I appreciate that about how he
Yeah.
handled.
Um, so did he say, like, because when he's saying I'm going to be smart, seem smarter to you as you get older, what was that epiphany that flipped that for you?
I was a late bloomer, so I really didn't. I bloomed late, so maybe like my senior year of high school, and so kind of like you have like those couple year periods where you just whatever blank out and do a lot of dumb stuff. And
Yeah.
so maybe I started maturing and paying closer attention, whatever it is, maybe my sophomore junior year of college, and
Yeah.
then I really started. I started then seeing my dad differently, and I don't remember what the exact time was when that happened, but I started engaging with him differently. And
Hmm.
then also it's kind of, I would say then a couple years after I got into the working world, I started reading more.
Hmm.
And so as I started working on my own personal development, you
Hmm.
start coming across things about forgiveness and looking at things a little bit differently. So then it allowed me to examine kind of that part of my life and
Right.
that part of the history of my life. And
Hmm.
so as I examine that, you start having more aha moments like, I probably reacted like a 12-year-old kid, not as a mature adult in that
Hmm.
situation. And
Yeah. I think it's so important, just that thought, because I think there's a lot of thoughts in our head that we carry from whatever time period that we don't reassess. Right. And so we just carry that. And then all of a sudden, one day, you might look at it differently if you stop and think about it instead of repeating the pattern or the thought or the whatever you say. And we don't even notice that it's happening. But, to your point, at 20 years old versus a 12-year-old, how can I reassess something differently? Do you remember any book you read or something that really started when you're talking about reading books on forgiveness and things like that? How did that even begin?
I don't remember the exact book. Um, I probably started with reading the classics, right? So
Hmm.
probably Zig Ziglar, Napoleon
Hmm.
Hill, Think and Grow Rich, some of those kind of things, which
Yeah.
in those books allow you to do some self-evaluation in that genre.
Right.
And, yeah, and so then you start peeling back those layers, and you start saying, "Oh, wow!"
Hmm.
And you realize that okay, that was you understand then that was a highly emotional time period, which is why it's such a strong memory.
Right.
And like you said, you think of the situation, hold these patterns, and then all of a sudden you see them through a different lens and it sheds new light. And then you also say, oh no, how many other of these situations, how many of these other
Yeah.
beliefs, patterns have I been holding on to? And so then you start unpacking them a little bit, one at a time. Maybe that's the maturing process. I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, and if you allow yourself to mature,
right.
because I don't, what your dad said was interesting because sometimes when kids grow older, they actually see people for who they are and don't think they're smarter. They might have thought they were smarter when they were younger. So that's a good reverse pattern to have as well. So um, just being the type of person that you did that internal reflection is probably unique, especially at that age, to do it.
Yeah, it was helpful. And I think I think actually Tony Robbins, now that it takes you
Hmm.
sometimes a little bit to catch up.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins has a book. I think it's Unleash the Power, Awaken the Giant Within, one of those two books where he talks about like how you can go back and figure out these triggering moments. And then as you examine the triggering moments, and you can make some choices like execute your own agency over like how you process that and then going forward.
Yeah. So while this was going on, your dad was kind of trying to protect you from like all the adult drama, right? And just
Right.
keeping that away. What was your mom doing as you were struggling?
Yeah. So at that time, so at 12 years old, maybe she was pregnant with my youngest.
Hmm.
Um, and then they did it. She miscarried, so on our sixth too. But
Oh, wow.
being a parent myself, it was just a lot of little kids around. So she was doing everything she could just to kind of keep the wheels on. And so it was a lot, right? So our household was a lot. So I didn't grow up with a lot of money or anything like that. So we had a lot of other things, but not tangible things. And so it was a lot. And so, yeah, I think it was just keeping us all going. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, as the oldest, you're kind of the one navigating for everybody else. Because I'm sure your younger, brothers and sisters were looking to you to see how to handle things.
Yeah. And I don't, as you look back, I don't think I handled it very well. I think I know for a fact I resented my parents for doing that for several years. And so during that time period, I wouldn't have been the best brother, to my siblings.
Yeah. Well, and those are important things to recognize, but also the fact that you've had those conversations with your father and I'm sure your siblings as well. Like, I think a lot of times I had a recent memory come up for me of something that I was made to do. It wasn't something that I wanted to do by my mom. And it was not inviting. It sounds silly, but I was that age, 12 years old. And I was about to have my bat mitzvah, and I wasn't allowed to invite my best friend. And at 12 years old, and for some reason, my mom just had an issue with this girl all the times that I was with her. And I do not know why. But it made it miserable. I couldn't sleep at her house. I couldn't, but I was always trying to dodge it with her and not say anything because I didn't know how to handle it. I mean, what was I supposed to say? Like, I don't know why my mom doesn't like you. Like, and so recently this came back to me because it was it sounds silly, but it ended up being a major thing where when I didn't invite her, it kind of created this whole thing where people are like, oh, you're standing up to her. And I didn't think I was standing up to her at all. I didn't want to do it. But I don't know what happened on her side. I only know in my side, like I felt like I was hiding and, or whatever. And that's how I've always viewed the story. And for some reason, my friends and I were talking about things that happened when we were younger. And this came up for me. And I was like, I don't know what happened to her or because she ended up going to another high school. So I reached out to her on Facebook. I hadn't seen her since I was 12. I was like, I don't know if this affected you or not, but I need to tell you, like, this is what happened, or whatever. And she responded, we're going to dinner tonight. It's kind of funny. But like how much there's a whole story on her side that I never considered because at 12 years old, you're so in your own story, and out of control of your whatever is happening in your environment.
Right. Wow. That's great. You're going to be able to talk to her about it too.
Yeah. But, even when something might seem silly older, I think that just facing, people and having those conversations and what their perspectives were when you can get a better perspective, I think is so healing.
Right. And to that point, that your friends, like being a part of a community, being like having your friend group, like that is your life.
Yes.
And so then your parents are sitting there trying to say, okay, they're doing everything they can to protect you and give you the best chance of success as possible. And so just, yeah.
You can't rationalize it at that age.
No.
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 And I think those are important things that happen in our life that are just those moments of learning and then how we grow from it. How did you end up being in accounting from the background that you were in?
Yeah. So during my childhood, my dad worked a lot, right, to take care of our family. And so I was raised to work hard. And just like most accountants, I was good with numbers, right? So I was good with numbers, fairly decent with people. And then I think also when I look back at it, and I know that I've talked to my dad, and his viewpoint was accounting, the CPA specifically. CPA is like a very safe career path. So if you're thinking about, let's say, the pressure of your oldest, you want your kids to be okay and live a good life. And it's like, okay, these align really well. So he had a lot of influence and directed me to that. And so then I had an opportunity. So I took accounting classes in high school, accounting 1, accounting 2. And like I said, I was a late bloomer. I wasn't popular. And then I also had like the high school accounting teacher grab a hold of me and like poured into me. And then his name's Chris Strathman. And so that helped me out tremendously. And then I was his teacher's aide as a senior. And then where I went to undergraduate, I had an opportunity. They had a really good accounting professor there at the time, Dave Odell at McPherson College. I had an opportunity to go there and play golf and do sports information, which is kind of like stats. And he also then, Dave, poured into me too when I was at college. And so it's like I had this pattern of people kind of directing and pouring into me and giving me an opportunity. And so it probably, but not probably, with them carrying on me and me being okay at the class, it just kind of resonated and clicked. And then I could start seeing it. And so I was just then on the pathway.
Yeah. I think, and this has come up in a number of my interviews, these people that are just these moments in time that have such a powerful, and it could be a bad effect too, but in this case, the fact that they took attention, did something, no one ever knows like those seeds they plant in people. Have you kept in touch with your high school teacher, your accounting professor?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough. So like, I went to grad school at K-State Manhattan, and we ran away to Kansas City for a couple of years and then moved back to get married and raise our family. And so like, they're both in and around the community still. So yeah, I've been around them for the last, 15 to 20 years. Yeah. And so I've been able to, share appreciation, not as much as what I should. I've had opportunities to kind of connect with them in different ways. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's been good to see that. And it's also good to see, like, I can see them through a different lens and start noticing all the people that they have affected in that similar way. Why it was so cool. I was nowhere near the only one. And I was like, you just see the impact a person, to your point, if someone's got the right mindset, the impact that they can have on just one kid or one person at a time, and just over a 20, 30, 40-year career, the impact is it's incredible.
Well, and that's, we kind of had a conversation before this podcast, but it really is one person at a time, right? Like, I think sometimes when we're looking to change and transform, we think we have to go big and do these big things, but you have such an exponential impact one person at a time. Because think about what they did for you, and now you have this firm where you're affecting all those people and all their families. Like, that all draws back to the high school teacher. Like, that's so cool. Now
the maturer version of me now recognizes that. But for the last 10 years, I was not wired that way. It's like, go big or go home, right? And then you realize, oh wow, you really do need to focus and do one thing at a time, one person at a time.
Well, and was that, I'm sure too, for you, having, seen the where you didn't have much growing up, and the possibility of, and this is what your dad was actually trying to get through to you, was like, you can have a different life than this. You can have a more secure life than this, right? Safe, career. And then you probably get a taste of it and are like, oh, look at what's possible.
Right. Very much so. And it's like every step up to what you mentioned, every step along the way, there's kind of been someone who's opened a door so I could see.
Yes.
And so like, as you can see, and someone cares and grabs your shirt and pulls you along too. Like, oh, okay, well, now my eyes are wide open.
Yeah. So when you graduated college, where did you start working, at this firm, or were you at a different firm?
No, I started at a big four. So I started at KPMG in
Oh, me
Kansas City.
too.
We're at
In Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I did an internship there and then went back and was there, I think about a little over a year. And
Mhm.
then I got busy feet. And, yeah, and left. So I ran away from public accounting into, at the time, it was really sexy to be a mortgage broker.
Oh, okay.
So I was a mortgage broker for a period of time and then went into banking for about 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I didn't realize is that, the mortgage broker job was 100% commission.
Hmm.
And what I did not plan for, didn't even dawn on me and think about, of course, I wasn't asking anybody for advice either. From if you help somebody with a mortgage day one, it takes at least 30 days to close.
Yes.
It's like I had no pipeline, no real big network. So it's like, oh wow, I'm going to starve here a little bit before I figure this thing out. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was
So,
a good learning opportunity for me. And then we moved back and raised our family.
and then where did you end up working when you came back?
So there is a bank. So when you're starving, you have to figure out and you get resourceful, right? And so the connections I did have were back in. So Kansas City is about 3 hours from the town I'm in. And so I had some connections back to the bank that I've banked with since paper out days at age 12. And so I called on the real estate department there to, if there was any loans that they couldn't do or they needed help with anything. So I started cultivating a relationship there. And that real estate loan officer, maybe 6 months later ish, something like that, left and went to another bank. And so they actually reached out to me to see if I would come back and work at their bank. So it was Home State Bank and Trust.
Oh, okay.
And so I had an opportunity to come back and do that. And it's been really helpful for me in my career to see the banking side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for about 2 years. And then one of the partners here, the old managing partner, came to me and said, hey, there's no guarantees. Our firm, one of the partners, Swindoll, is getting ready to retire in about 5 years. If you're willing to start back over at the bottom and work your way up, there may be an opportunity for you.
Oh, wow.
And so at the time, maybe we had a firm of about 22 or 25 people, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also then realized in banking, it's hard to make a really good living. I mean, you can make a good living, but kind of where I wanted to get to, it's hard to do that in banking without owning the bank.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he tapped me on the shoulder at the right time.
Wow. So then your trajectory. So in 5 years, you became a partner.
So I was, so 18 years ago I started. Yeah, I think I was 30. I was 30 when I became a partner. And then I took over managing partner at 32.
Wow. How did that happen?
Yeah. I've been, so timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the previous managing partner, Kyle Hawk, was also my mentor here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had done it for probably 15 or 18 years previously. I'm wired towards like advisory and business, and he was kind of my mentor. And so I've just sponged it. So I think timing wise, he was ready and I wanted it. I wanted to be a part of helping drive change in our firm. And so it's kind of a mixed bag. And to turn over the reins to a 32-year-old, his hindsight probably would say one of the scariest moments of his life. And probably days he would say it was the stupidest thing I ever did. And other times like, okay, well, that was taking a shot.
So do you feel you were ready at 32?
The 32-year-old version of me was, I was cocky enough. I was ready.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was moderately invincible. It seemed like I hadn't been bloodied enough to realize what I didn't know.
Yeah. And I think that is the difference in age. Like when I think about myself now versus younger, of like, you think you want all these things, you're climbing for all these things, and then you get them and you're like, oh, that's all it is.
Right.
And now there's more stress. Yeah. Like,
Right. Because we're somewhat wired, and goes back to like, I was wired a little bit more towards like you have an achievement orientation. You want to help.
Mhm.
So if the best of both worlds, I can help people and
Right.
I can see the impact, which is awesome. And I'm achieving. And it's like it's like for me, it would have been seeking approval and the oldest
Right.
stuff, all those kind of things. And so yeah, you're going the next level of achievement, next level of achievement. Then each one you realize, oh, to your point, Amy, like this is what that is.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
so
so when you said you've been bloodied,
mhm.
maybe explain what that shift was for you.
um, so early on, like I've learned to try things
Hmm.
and understand it's okay to try things, and you're gonna fail as part of that
Hmm.
process. And we've we've been embarking on this journey of path to 45, like transforming our firm. So transforming a quality old school legacy firm from old school to new school. We've been doing that for the last 12 years ish.
Hmm.
And so when
But
we
why
started,
did you want to?
yeah, because I was ready to quit. Yeah, like I would
Because it
bloody
was too
like
many hours for you.
yep. So our average partner at the time, so four or five partners, the average was 2,800 to 3,000 hours a year. I had three kids. My oldest at the time would have been, so she's now 18. She would have been like 6, 4, 2, or whatever the numbers are, something like that.
Hmm.
And then so I was feeling like not a very good dad.
Hmm.
I was, struggling and say, I'm going to do something. I'm gonna have to quit or do something like this, something different. Like I just can't. And that's hard for me because I was brought up to work hard. Like work hard, go get it, don't whine, don't complain,
Hmm.
go. And so then what I was about ready to quit, and actually we had a partner retreat, called a retreat, unfacilitated retreat. We got together and we got on a board and just talked about it's like, hey, what do we want? What do we want? Like, what do we really want? And what we found was each one of us wanted the same thing. We wanted to work less, we wanted to make more. And not really, the make more wasn't a huge thing. It was just like work less and then be there for our families and have more fun doing what we do. And so there was no, and so in that partner retreat, we all came out of there knowing we wanted something different and we're bought into it. And so
And was
because there was kind of
everybody around the same age in their 30s?
no, I would have been whatever that had been at the time, maybe 31. So maybe the year before I became managing partner, 31, and they were 50, 51. So the other three partners would have been, I think, 20 years older than me.
Wow.
And so
And
they're in their early
yeah.
50s and wanting something similar, but no
And
one really knew how to do it.
so it's just interesting because even now in this day and age, we still struggle in that age range of partners
Yeah,
wanting to shift, even though, because now they've done it and it's become a way of life. What was it that those because you had young kids, so,
right.
all the stressors, they're not kind of in that same situation. Were they feeling pressure from the staff? What was it that they were feeling pressure about to make this change?
I think kind of going through it now, you reach like, I might say midlife crisis, but you reach a point in your career where you establish your career and, it's not about the money then anymore
Hmm.
either. And you start evaluating lifestyle. And so I
Hmm.
think in their early 50s, they're evaluating lifestyle.
Hmm.
And it's like, just wanted something different. I think just
Right.
fundamentally, it was just a lot. When you're cranking that many hours for that many years,
Right.
and we still had a family friendly firm. So like they weren't missing any kids games. They were going to the kids games and then coming back and working. So they didn't miss any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but just ready. and it
Yeah.
ready, but still kind of lost on how to do it.
Right. Yeah. So how did you do it?
Yeah, so that's the bloody part, right? Bloody part. So it's kind of like, okay, so here's what we want. And there was no playbook to how to do it at the time, at least one that we were aware of.
Oh, you were way ahead of your time.
Old
Yeah.
school from new school. And so it's like, okay, well, go. You have our support, start figuring it out. And so then we've tried hundreds of things. Some big things, some small things. We fail at probably half the things we try, or, they lead to adaptations. But we just started going. But the hardest thing, honestly, the first hardest thing I had to do was the walk of shame. And the walk of shame was like, so we had at the time had one office location. And so it used to be during a busy season here, we started early. And so it's kind of a race to, not a race, but who would get there first, kind of. So you go from getting there at 6:30 to 6 to 5:30 to 5 to 4:30. And so one of the hardest things to do was to start coming in at 7 when everybody was coming in at 5:30. And I say everybody, the 3 other partners, a couple other partners, and just walking by their office. Right? Because I felt, and it was probably more me than anything. They may not even notice, or they did or they didn't.
And it's still 7 a.m.
Yeah, right. It's still 7 a.m. But to just start changing, just to like to intentionally start changing, and just say, hey, we're going to do this, do it different. We got to try this. And so just being willing to do it was a tough one. But then over time, the dominoes started to tip.
And what was that tipping point? Like what caused it?
What caused it was just the momentum of like just starting, like taking the action. So I would say like the original thing was us committing. The second thing was actually starting to take action. And so the first action was just start coming in a little bit later and stick to it and not give.
And so then I just want to pause there because I think that's really important. You just have one little thing to change first.
Right.
Because if you take on too many things, it's gonna fail. So you had to like get over that hurdle of just time in the door.
Right. And then you just start attacking in one next big problem at a time. So like in the early days, our January was a mess. It's like our January created this domino effect, right? So our payroll team, our 1099 team, like we get off to such a bad start. And so where we started then was let's fix January. So once we started building that, as the domino started tipping, it was like, well, let's fix January. And so then we started with January. And from there, then we just the next thing. And then of course, you can tell by in the background, I read a lot of books. And so it's kind of like applied learning. So learn something and try to apply it. And here's some different theories. Would it work in practice here? And so we tried all different kinds of stuff.
So what are some things that failed?
Yeah. Failed was, so there is a really great book written by Edie Osborne called Firm Forward. And so in 2006, I read it it's gotta be longer than 12. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it matters. 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, read it. It really resonated. So she did a magnificent job writing a story on a firm transformation. Have you read that before?
No, I haven't.
Really good. It's a simple story read. It was excellent. And it really resonated where we were at that point in our journey. And so at the time, she had this thing called level 5 advisory. And so I'm bent towards advisory. So the thought process was, if we could take and upskill the majority of our team to delivering advisory services, we'd be able to do less of the stuff that we don't want to do, more of the stuff that's like creates this huge feedback loop. And we know, and you've done tons of advisory, that when you do advisory and you help people, it creates such a sense of joy in you, in your heart, but then also allows for premium level service, deeper relationships, all the positives that kind of come on the backside of it. So at the time, she had level 5 training where you could go out and get trained by her in California. And so maybe it's like $12 to $15,000 a person. You could go out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had this bright idea that, well, rather than doing that, why don't we have her come here and train more of our people? So
Mm-hmm.
we had her come do it. And there was nothing that she did wrong. She did a fantastic job, and we got a ton of value from it, except for we shocked our whole ecosystem. So if we had a lot of people on our team, now hindsight's 2020, we had a lot of people on our team that were actually comfortable and stuck delivering core commodity services and actually weren't doing, as I think about the spectrum of, you have this core commodity services, and then you have like the jump to basic advisory, intermediate advisory, advanced advisory. We had tons of people that weren't even doing basic advisory.
Right.
And so we were trying to take them from no advisory to like in management consultant superstars overnight.
Right.
And that was that was the immature version of me saying, oh, this makes tons of sense. Well, it made sense to me, and I did it. And I realized is that, oh, I need to be a little bit smarter. We should have 2 or 3 of us go through that and then stair step, bring along the next ones. But I didn't. I got going too fast, screwed up, immature. And so, yeah, shocked our ecosystem. And so it took about a year to kind of rebuild that, somewhat rebuild the trust of the team, because we have to pivot. But we still do kind of a version of that today. And Edie's training was transformational. Her stuff is really good content. Her book is fantastic. Where I screwed up is I had a lot of people in the room that weren't ready to be in the room. And we gave them the option if they wanted to do it or not. And looking back, it's like, well, that really wasn't a valid choice we were giving them. It's like they would have felt the pressure of their career had they not said yes to it. Not that we put them in the wrong, our rest of our team.
And I think a big thing with that, when I work with firms on this transformation, like you said, you kind of have to start with leadership, make sure you can shift all of that. But when you're introducing it to people on the staff, you've also come up with what you're going to do to help nurture those people so they feel safe and secure, that they're not going to lose their job. Because people's natural tendency is to feel fear versus excitement.
Right. No,
of what's in it for them. And so if you haven't put a plan together of like, this is how we're gonna support you on this journey and train you, and we're not gonna just let everyone, see who can rise to the top.
and dummy me, I just thought everybody was on the same, like in the same mindset, on the same pathway as me. It's like, no, dummy, you gotta. and at the time, like I was introduced to systems theory after that, complex adaptive systems and systems theory. And then as soon as I was reading that stuff and studying it and getting to know it and apply it, it just dawned on me like, oh my gosh, you like committed one of the biggest no-no. And so it's kind of like, there's
but
that.
We all walk in our own shoes, and that's the thing. Like, we can only see things from our perspective a lot of times if we don't, have that moment to step back and try to think about what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. It's kind of like the story with your dad, right? Until you could step back and see what it was like to be in his shoes outside of your perspective. And it's the same thing with time. We can look back and see those things.
Yeah, very much so. And you look back and you just kind of, oh no, just like put your hand on your head, like, what did I do?
But you wouldn't have this amazing firm if you I think there's a balance, because one of the things I do believe is to be a good leader, you do have to make people uncomfortable. Because your job is to constantly be thinking about what do we need to do next. That's a way of protecting them too, is like, not just being status quo, is that there's always going to be change so that we can stay on top and, be the best for our clients, be the best for each other. So there's a balance of vision and process.
Right. Right. And yeah, and then just not like a trigger happy
Right.
leader
Yeah.
that does like, hey, slow down and think things through a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And just when you realize that it's not like a thing to judge, I think I think the growth part for anybody is awareness. If
Right.
we become more aware of that, we can only grow from it, but our role in life is just to constantly be aware and notice things, but not ever be too hard on ourselves about it. But we obviously, when you saw that happen, you had to shift again and learn.
Right. Pivot. And then it's kind of like you're saying, sometimes you have to experience it. The only way you know is to experience.
Right.
And then take an inventory and be more self-aware of, oh, okay,
Yes.
a learning mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. So where are you at now with this after this 12-year journey?
Yeah. So this was a really good busy season for us. So 3 years ago, we kind of drew a line in the sand because we had made a lot of progress, and we got into most people most weeks working 52 hours a week. And so it's like, it's just not good enough. There's a difference between 45 and 52 hours a week. That doesn't sound like a lot mathematically, but the 7 hours we're talking about is people getting their weekends back, or one extra hour in the evening. And so if I always think back, if I'm a working mom or a working dad, and I get home at, let's say, call it 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and the kids go down at 8, you start your bedtime routine. It makes a huge difference. Like it makes such a huge difference for an elongated period of time. If we're talking about a normal 10 to 12 week busy season, it's not a 1 or 2 week harvest. It's an elongated period of time, and the effects
I love that. It's not a 1 to 2 week harvest.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So from your perspective.
Yeah, we're in transition, so it's we have a metaphor we can always use here.
Yeah.
But so where we're at is, so we drew a line in the sand 3 years ago, and again, this is like a learning moment, because why I would have thought 3 years ago you had a more mature version of Chet. He was, except for I was going to go from 52 to 45 in 1 year. And so I would have shocked our whole ecosystem again. But thankfully, I've started embracing the team way more and using a lot of checks and balances, and knowing that, like, okay, you have your own biases, you have your own way you experience our firm. Make sure you're gathering value, different opinions, seeking counsel around our firm. So we ended up at the right spot. So we went from 52 to 50 to 48 to then this year was 45. And so most people,
like 4 years.
Yep. And so, and that's during the various busy times of the year. So like we have multiple departments. So in our outsourced accounting department, for example, payroll would have a busier year end. And so in December, we want to look out for them. We have an audit department, and we have several 630 year end audits, and we do several employee benefit plan audits. And so you have different times of the year where you want to make sure. So for us, it's path to 45, and we want to cap what people are having to work during their busy time periods of the year, not just the traditional, what you call tax season.
So does that mean what will happen is mostly them people thinking maybe you had to hire more people, you had to raise prices? What things did you do systematically to get there?
Yeah, all the above. So, like, are you familiar with Henry Cloud's work on boundaries?
No.
You have boundaries very much. So that helped a lot of thinking through just boundaries, or like theories of constraints. So if you take like boundaries, theories of constraints, Parkinson's law,
Mm-hmm.
These are all things like Parkinson's law is work expanding to time. Theory of constraints would be things like, and this is a Chet abridged version, which like I get half the themes right.
Yeah.
But when you constrain a system, you say, okay, we're going to go from this normal work week down. So we go from 52 hours to 50. That's a boundary and we're not going to change it. Then it forces us to figure out how to, right? So constraining the system, constraining the resources forces you to get smarter.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done then all the above. We've
Mm-hmm.
hired seasonal. We staff a bunch of interns. We have admin interns. We have executive assistants. We like our interns this busy season. We had, I think, 22 on our team. And so, and that's 22 of, if I send an email to everybody during busy season, it went to maybe 116 people. So we've chosen to do that onshore versus offshore. We haven't offshored yet. But all the things, we've cold clients, we've added strategic locations, we've staffed more heavily in admin, just in general. We've adopted a theory of having our accountants function like doctors be doctors. So how do we help in centralized billing? How do we just take things off our accountants' hands and get the right work to the right people at the right time?
Mm-hmm.
Scheduling, like just all kinds of stuff. But in theory, like at a high level, the macro decision was constraining the system and committing to it. Yeah. It's like everybody knows in the heat of the battle, I will not say we're increasing hours this week. And so if people know that we will not do that, then it forces you to work smarter, not just harder.
Right.
This year, we're still fighting and we're working on now is called Path to 45 2.0. Our last 2 weeks of this busy season, too much compression, way too much compression. Even all the things we've done, we had way too much compression and it wasn't as much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2.0 is like, okay, we're constantly working on it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is a big piece of this is that it's never done.
No.
And you have to monitor the system to make sure that it maintains, because the minute you stop watching it, then it starts popping back, right? Like who is disciplined enough or watching the system enough, and where are those people planted around the organization to ensure that you can meet your goals?
Right. Absolutely. And to that point, like in the system, we've gotten to where in our firm where every day from 9:30 to 11:30, we have a thing called focus time.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 hours a day where our office functionally turns into a library, which it's 2 hours a day to do your deep work, focused work, best work, uninterrupted work. And so it's kind of this old adage too. We looked at an aha moment was, I can't remember how many times I used to say, and we used to say, man, if I only had a couple of hours of uninterrupted time, what could I get done? Or every time we would have like free time, it's amazing what you can get done. So we reverse engineered that. So like why don't we incorporate that across our firm? So every day we started beta test during busy season, maybe 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And over time now, every day throughout the year, it's on everybody's calendar from 9:30 to 11:30, focus time to do your best work.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things about this that's so important. I mean, that you've talked about, just about the length of time this takes. I think people think there's an easy button, we'll just raise prices. That's not going to get you there.
Right.
There's, like you said, there's so many facets of the system, the organization, the processes, the technology. You have to evaluate everything in your firm. And then there's a firing order, because you can only take on so much at once of like, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do this next, and realize that it's progress. We have a value in our business called Progress, Not Perfection. Because we know if you're putting something new in or we're putting a new initiative out, like it's not going to be perfect. We're going to run into issues as we go through it. But we want to keep making progress and saying, what can we do better? So I think it's important, your story, because there is no easy way to do this. Everyone's got to be on board to do it. You had to have support of your partners to do this, and then the monitoring of it, when you're coming into work later and they're still not coming into work, and being accountable to each other on those things. So it's just such an important story, and I'm so glad that you were able to share that with us today. I do like to end with some rapid fire questions, and just to kind of figure out from you where you're at and what things you would look to do different from a personal standpoint, or what things you like. So pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Money would be fun.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want with money.
Jet.
A jet?
Yeah, a jet. Yeah. Once you've had the opportunity to fly private, like it spoils you. You realize
It's hard to
like
go back.
I
Yeah.
don't to know I really have one. I just want to be able to go on our airport, our small
Right.
airport, get on it, go, get back. Just
Like your car. Yeah. Okay. Things or actions I do have that I want to keep.
House, a home.
Okay.
And
Yes.
a real big one for us is just make sure our house is a home, and have the stuff where like our kids' friends, our kids want to be at our house and do things at our house.
Yeah, I love that. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want with money.
A second home. Like I'm not a good maintenance person. Like keeping up with something else. And
You don't have a private jet to fly between them.
Yeah, I know. It's like
Yes. All right. And last one: things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
We have tons of crap at our house. I think that's the professional way to say it. Just crap that accumulates. It's just, yeah. So we got to do a better job of purging those things.
Got to get rid of it. Cool. So, so many great things from your story. Is there anything that you haven't said or you want to emphasize before we end today's show?
Yeah, I love you're doing this. I love the topics that you talk about. And I would say, just to provide encouragement to anybody that would be listening to this, you can. And so, like, it's cliche, but anything's really possible in our industry. And there's a lot more people out there that can unite around a common vision. So if you want a better life, if you want to transform your firm or you want to transform your career, it's possible. And there's a lot of people that will gather around you to help you do it. And so, like for us, there isn't anything that we've remotely accomplished that would have happened had I not leaned more into our team. The level of things that we're able to accomplish now happen because we have a bunch of people bought into a vision and they're helping make it happen. And so I've just seen, so I hope that anybody that listens to this finds encouragement in, there's a lot of people who want what we all want, like a more meaningful, balanced, integrated life. There's a lot of people that want the same thing. And it's one of those things that we feel like a little bit hesitant to talk about. But then as you start talking about it, you realize like we all are all somewhat similar and kind of want similar things. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. And I look forward to talking to you again soon in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy.
And now for my mindful moments with this interview I had with Chet. There were so many key areas here for those of you that are really looking to help transform your organization and what it really means to do that, and that the path is never over of transformation. That a lot of times we think when we go into change management that we do it, we set it, and we forget it, except that that's just not how it is anymore. Technology keeps getting better. We keep having more demands on the system, whether it be from clients, whether it be from people that work for us. And it's important that we make the commitment to the long haul of making that journey to where we want the future of our organization to be. So during this interview, we talked about his path to 45 hours a week and what it really took to get there, and the other processes and programs that he has in place in order to ensure that they create the culture that they want in this organization. So we talked about really his life story and some key moments that really changed him as a person. And that was really a tipping point in 5th grade. And in 5th grade, he moved an hour and a half away from his extended family that was living in the small town in Kansas, and they had a population of less than 500 people, to a town that was a major city in Kansas. And really, this was a time in his life where we all know what middle school is like, and not really understanding the perspective of every decision an adult has to make. And one of the things he learned was how hard it was to fit in, and during that time being mad at his parents for going through this. But his dad saying to him, as you get older, I'm going to get smarter. And that's one of the things that when change happens, and we have to understand that as leaders, a lot of times in our organizations, the staff that is there are comfortable. There are some staff that want change, but when they actually go through what change means, they aren't as excited about it than when they started, because change means work and we have to start somewhere. And so we might go through hard times as we're going through change management. And I thought this quote is such an important quote in change management, because as leaders, we're making decisions that we think are best for the future, and not everyone can see our vision when we are doing it. And as time goes by and as things get implemented, then as people are feeling the change and the benefits of the change, all of a sudden you're the smartest person in the room. But as things are going wrong along the way, people aren't real happy with you. And so even what he experienced as a child, he also has experienced as an owner of a business, of really trying to move his business into the future and making sure everyone is on that journey with him. So as he got older, he really understood his father better. And one of the things that he appreciated about it was that he understood it from a different perspective. And I think it's important that when these things are happening in our life, that we always kind of go through from one lens of, what it's like to be us, but not necessarily thinking about what it's like to be someone else. And one of the things that he learned was that he never said any bad things about the family or didn't make him feel guilty for the feelings that he had during that time, which I also think is a really good lesson in change management, is realizing that the people that work for you are going to feel frustrated, and to not hold them accountable to that or blame that forever on them. That everybody deals with change differently, and it's important that as people learn and they're nurtured along the way, that we help them to not feel guilty about maybe how they first felt about it or even what they said. And we don't always hold that over their heads. I see a lot in the consulting that I do that when someone fails at something early on, and especially in something new, a lot of times people don't forget, and they're bringing it up like 3 years later and way past that performance era where they've actually improved, but we haven't opened our perspective to see them in a different light. So I think that's really important that as we learn from Chet's path and his own experience and his family, just realizing what it takes to do the things that we need to do that are hard. If they were easy, it wouldn't be easy to be a leader. And so we talked about him wanting to drive change with his partner group once he became managing partner. And what he had a discussion with his partners was that many of them were working 2,800 to 3,000 billable hours a year, which meant that those partners were mainly focused on client work versus leading the people around them or managing or coaching. And they were missing really important times in their families' lives, their kids' lives along the way. And so it wasn't even just the staff that was asking for this, it was also the partners. And so this started 12 years ago, where they really sat around a table at a retreat and asked themselves, what do they want? And they wanted to work less, they wanted to make more, they wanted to have more fun. So they all had to buy into it. And this is a big message that I have when I do consulting is we think there's an easy button to making change in this organization. Like Chet has said here, it's taken 12 years to get there. But they had the vision 12 years ago, but they had to keep each other accountable and be the example for everybody else in order for them to see that it is okay to make these changes as well in their own work life. If they don't see the leaders doing it, it just doesn't happen. And so their path to 45 started out with just little things that they had to change. And one of those changes were the partners were coming in at 5:30 a.m. every day. So if the staff is seeing that, they're feeling like they need to come in at 5:30 a.m. And so Chet talked about how hard it was for him to even walk in at 7 a.m. in those initial years and walk past those offices of those partners so that they would see that he was making a shift so that they would start shifting it as well. So he talked about what was really important is number one was commitment to the change, but also as far as the actions to do one at a time. Sometimes we take on too much, and when we do that, we leave people in the dust, that not everybody learns at the same pace. And he ran into that problem very early on where he shocked his whole ecosystem and jumped in too fast. And instead of stair-stepping things and taking one thing at a time, he wanted things to move faster. And when he did that, people failed at that because they didn't understand what was going on. They weren't being nurtured along the way so that they felt safe, that they weren't going to lose their jobs. So it's important that people during a change process is we know what we want, but we're also building in what is the support we are going to provide in order to make sure that people feel safe during those change processes. I also thought that it was an important thing, and I also titled the podcast where he said it's not a 1 to 2 week harvest, which obviously shows his background. Instead, it's an elongated period of time that it takes to do change. So just going from 52 hours a week to 45 hours a week took 4 years. That they had to keep adjusting little things in their system to get there. They went from 52 to 50, then to 48, and then to 45. And that meant year round. So when we talk about making this kind of change, we don't necessarily think about what are all the processes and surrounding things we need to do in the business in order to do that. And that includes people, that includes automation, that may include offshoring, that may include how we schedule, how we price, how we client call, how we set our client personas. All of these things take time, and each thing makes its own difference. But it's not just one thing. And I loved that they set up this 9:30 to 11:30 focus time every day where people are uninterrupted and able to get work done. So they're not multitasking and they're not having to do things later in the day or overtime in order to get work done. So he left off with that anything is possible when you get people to unite around a common vision. And that is so true. We cannot do these things alone. It takes a team, it takes a village, it takes a community, and everyone believing in the outcome, but also getting their feedback along the way to ensure that it will be successful. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Chet. There were so many actionable stories that he talked about during this. I also truly appreciate how transparent he was about his life story. We all learn from each other's life stories, and it just shows that we connect better when we show up more transparent. And when we shift our energy, it shifts the energy around us as well. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, also share with your colleagues and friends so that everyone can take these actions, and it's just one person at a time making this better. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.